Good evening. I am Dr. Jim Butler. I am going to be teaching the Philosophy 1304 class, which is really better known as an introduction to world religions. And I want to emphasize, if I can, the word introduction. We will be looking at most of, if not all of, the major world religions and a few of the smaller ones, if you will. Again, I'm glad that you're here. This is my favorite class to teach. I have taught it on several occasions at this particular school, and I'm excited to be back doing this class again. In your emails, you should be receiving a syllabus of what we're going to be doing over the next few weeks for this particular class. And also, along with that, there will be an Introduction to World Religions class outline for you to follow. But all the classes are going to be taught and what we're going to be doing those particular nights, and also something to work on your term paper. Now, speaking of term paper, there will be a research paper. There will be an outline about what the research paper is about and how to do it. And you should be able to um, pull that together fairly quickly. Now, I'm going to begin this evening, as I do in every one of our world religions classes, with kind of an introduction to the study of world religions, because I think that's a very good place to start rather than just starting into one of the particular religions themselves. First of all, the question is raised, why do we need to study world religions? That is a fairly legitimate question. World religion traditions always have offered some of life's weightier questions. It kind of wants to answer those questions. So that's one of the reasons we study world religions, is to answer some of the weighty questions that the world keeps asking. World religions have also contributed to the formation of political and social institutions. Keep that in mind. Religions have also inspired great art, and religions have also inspired great architecture. Many values and ideals find their base in one or more of the world's religions. So, these world religions may answer questions like, why are we here? And maybe, what is the nature of the universe? World religions might even answer the question, how should I live? So, there's an invitation. This is kind of an invitation for us to study together the whole concept of world religions. Too often people treat world religions more as observers. They never dig down deep into the meaning and the significance behind the religion itself. For example, for someone to see a yin yang, Y-I-N-Y-A-N-G, a yin yang is, some people see it and they think it's just a form of a tattoo or a piece of jewelry, or maybe even it's a work of art. But the truth is, to study Chinese religions tells us that the yin yang is so much more complex than that. It is a symbol used in the Taoist religion, which comes out of China, and we'll talk about that more later. So it gives us a better perspective on some of the things we see on an ongoing basis. To be an educated global thinker and studying world religions also gives us the possibility to be a global citizens, or be global citizens. Religions tend to shape us. They tend to shape our culture and maybe even change our culture. When religion is interactive with other parts of the culture, such as politics, economics, and other things, it can become destructive or it can become constructive, depending on how one reacts. Religions can be powerful, or as one person puts it, they can be dangerous. That's why it's important for us to understand. That's why it's important for us to study and understand the roles of religions in our complex world, and helps us to negotiate our way through this world. Now, there are some common misconceptions out there that all religions are the same. This leads one to the idea, well, then why do we need to study religions if they're all just the same anyway? the study of world religions is a fairly contemporary development. It's a fairly new development. It was not until the European Enlightenment period that people began to see religions as a separate entity from culture. And if they're a separate entity from culture, then they need to be studied. Immanuel Kant, K-A-N-T, was a German philosopher, and he conceived of religion as something beyond what the mind can conceive. It is something beyond what the mind can conceive, and coupled with world exploration. And when there's world exploration, there is also coming into contact with unfamiliar religions that brought new efforts into studying world religions. Even to this day, we study and continue to study this concept of world religions. Now, how do we separate religion from the study of theology? And they are different. Theology focuses on doing and being religious. Religion is different from that. The challenge of defining religions is an interesting question. The author of the textbook actually says it's like equating religion to houses. How do we go off into foreign places? How do we go off into different places to study houses without first knowing what constitutes a house? What does a house look like? How's a house constructed? Thinking that a bit further, some of the writers say that studying world religions or studying religions or world religions are more like a mansion, particularly old mansions that have undergone a lot of refurbishing. So therefore, if we're going to study world religions, we're going to look at the teachings, we're going to look at the histories, and we're going to look at the practices of each religion. Now, in the textbook on page 9, there are 3 different people from 3 different fields of study who share their definitions of religion. One was a sociologist by the name of Emily Durkheim, and she says, a religion is a unified system of beliefs and practices relative to sacred things. That is to say, things set apart and forbidden. Beliefs and practices which unite into one single moral community called the church, all those who adhere to them. The next one is William James. William James was a psychologist. He said, religion is the feelings, acts, and experiences of individual men in their solitude, so far as they apprehend themselves to stand in relation to whatever they consider the divine. And finally, Paul Tillich, who was a theologian. He says, the religious aspect points to that which is ultimate, infinite, unconditional in a man's spiritual life. Religion, in the largest and most basic sense of the word, is ultimate concern. Now, those are 3 fairly short defining ideas about what religion might be. Now, but they all come at their own particular idea of what religion is. They come at it from their own particular perspective. And I want to tell you a story. It's the story of the blind man and the elephant. If you remember the story, it was like 9 different blind men went up to and started touching an elephant. Some touched the trunk, some touched the legs, some touched the tail. And when they start to figure out what the elephant was really like, some said he was more like a snake, like the tail. Some say it was more like a tree trunk with the legs. Some said his trunk was more like a horn or something like that. They all had their own idea of what the elephant was, and they all came at it from their own different perspective. Now, there are 2 more distinct definitions, if you will. HarperCollins Dictionary of Religions gives this definition. One may clarify the term religion by defining it as a system of beliefs and practices that are relative to super beings. Now that's interesting, except it also, there's a restriction to the definition of the use of the word super beings. When I think of super beings, I think of more of Marvel Comics and the superheroes that we find in different sorts of comic books. But that's not really what we're talking about. Bruce Lincoln wrote a book called Holy Terrors, and he was thinking about religion and after September the 11th, 2001, and he states that religion always consists of 4 domains. Bruce Lincoln, Holy Terror, says there are 4 domains in religion. 1, discourse. Discourse. Number 2, practice. Number 3, community. And finally, number 4, institution. Now, that particular definition of religion does not speak to super beings, and therefore it could be inclusive of religions like Confucianism or some sort or some sects of Buddhism. Now, let's talk for a second about what religion does. No matter how you define world religions, it must be understood that religion does. Religion is active. I want to drive that home if I can. Religion is active. Many people, though, even those who define religion, try to reduce it down more to what are the effects of religion? What are the outcomes of religion? 2 other well-known voices believed religion was not desirable. It was undesirable. And perhaps they thought it was even more detrimental. One was Sigmund Freud. He called religion the neurosis of humanity. And Karl Marx said that man makes religion, and he even goes as far as to call it the opiate of the people. Now, neither man really defined religion. They simply would rather just write it off or explain it away. It was to them, it was an unnecessary part of the human life. To them, religion did more harm than it did good. Now, you have to understand that both of these men were atheists. So, the question remains, why do religions exist? Some would say it has to do with the human condition, the way humans are, and the separation between what is humanity and what is sacred. And that led to beliefs, practices, rituals, and bringing someone closer to a higher being. Our authors, the authors of this book, propose 3 prominent questions addressed by religions. 3 prominent questions that are addressed by the different religions. Number 1, what is ultimate reality? Good question. What is ultimate reality? And how should we live in this world? How should we behave in this world? What is our ultimate purpose? Now, ultimate reality is dealt with in all religions. Even if the belief is just that we live in this world and we live in this world just for the moment. Divine, we hear the word divine a lot, and we use the word divine a lot, but divine does not always refer to God, and it doesn't always refer to gods. When it does refer to God, it's theistic. Theistic, theistic. When there is no reference to God or any gods, the religion is non-theistic. non-theistic. Zen Buddhism is a good example of this. We'll talk more about that when we get into the concept of Buddhism. Transtheistic, trans hyphen theistic. It acknowledges the existence of God, but does not believe that God is vital or brings enlightenment or even brings salvation to the world. Now, let's talk about theistic religions for a minute. There are several different forms of theistic religions. One is polytheism, polytheism, and that talks about many gods in existence inside of a religion. Okay, polytheism. Now, monotheism is a belief in one God. Usually, when you talk about monotheism, there's a capital G when you talk about God. Then there's henotheism, henotheism. It consists of a plurality of gods or goddesses who are elevated above the others. Greek and Roman and some Hindu religions have gods that are higher above the others. In the Hindu gods, the two highest ones are Vishnu, who is the male, and Shiva, who's the female. Then there is pantheism, pantheism, and in that God is equated with all things. God is equated with the world and all things that are in the world, including the material things. The author of the textbook point out that there are several world religions who have entities who are supernatural. Let me try to figure this one out. They're supernatural, but they're not necessarily God. For example, there are religions who actually worship demons and angels, but they don't happen to be gods. And there's also that non-belief system, if you will. We know it as atheism. Atheism denies that there is an existence of a God in the first place. Atheism, believe it or not, is on the rise in our world today, especially among the younger people. Then there is monism, monism. This is the belief that all reality is ultimately one. Monism, that all reality is ultimately one. Some Hindus can believe in many gods. Okay, they can believe in many gods, but in reality, at the same time, they believe in Brahman, Brahman, and Brahman is impersonal, and Brahman is indescribable. In fact, they believe that Brahman is the essence of all things. This can also lead or bring on a thought of non-dualistic, meaning there's no difference between divine and the rest of reality. But Brahman, according to Hindus, is the ultimate. Religions also describe how divine reality is revealed to humans. In theistic religions, it is normally spelled out in the scriptures, or it might be spelled out in sacred writings, and usually describes the role of God and what the role of God is in history. Revelation, the revelation normally experienced by the one who's the founder of the religion. In other words, revelation for the founder of the religion usually comes by way of God speaking to them. The revelation is written down eventually so that believers can participate in the revelation. An example is Buddhism, that in scriptures reveal Buddha and Buddha's experience in nirvana. Now, there's another word I want to throw, hierophany, hierophany. Mircea Eliade, who was a religious historian, wrote about this, and she said it helps people develop a better understanding of giving and establishing places that are sacred to revelation. In other words, in Christianity, it might be the place of the cross. In Islam, it would definitely be Mecca. For Judaism, it might be the place, the Temple Mount, where the temple was. But the church and the nativity for Christians is especially important, in Mecca for Muslims, as I said a while ago. Religions also speak to the origins and the status of the world. Origins and status, in that case, are intertwined. Hindus and Buddhists especially embrace the truth that ultimate freedom, ultimate reality, is to be completely free from the confines of this world. To them and to these believers, the world is an illusion. It's not even real. The term used is cosmology. Cosmology. Many religions attribute the development of the world and the universe to divine beings or divine forces, but not necessarily a god or a goddess. Modern scientific explanations have validated some religious beliefs. The truth is, a religion's greater view of cosmology will translate into how a believer sees the role of stewardship in that particular religion. So, that raises a question. How should we live in the world? Religions say a lot about divine beings and super beings. but it is religion that is communicated, if you will, through the human language. It is communicated by the rituals carried out by human beings. It would be impossible for human beings to explain God. We can't explain God, so we use our own terms and our own understanding. So religion explains not only God, it also explains human beings. But that also leads us to a moral dilemma or an ethical question. Are human beings by nature good or evil? Or maybe in between? Religion normally sees humans as not always doing what we're supposed to be doing. We're not always doing what's right. And religion offers us teachings, and religion offers us disciplines to move people more toward a moral and ethical improvement. It helps us to be better people. A lot of religions, many religions offer us ways of achieving the right behavior in our lives. The Ten Commandments in Judaism. Many equate the destination of the afterlife with the behaviors that we do in this world. Speaking of morality and ethics, if we live moral, ethical lives, if we live these ways that we're supposed to, then we will find a better place when we die. Some religions speak, if you will, of revealed ethics where God, the God or gods establish what is ethically correct. In some religions, ethics is more revealed by a god or gods, but it relies on the conscience. Buddhism is a prime example. Christianity, if you will, includes both the revealed as well as the conscience when it comes to ethics. Religion or religions moves to answer some more questions. What is our ultimate purpose? Some would say the truth. Some would say the truth is our ultimate purpose. The fact that death is a reality is the one primary force of religion. Christianity places a lot of focus on the resurrection of Christ, and therefore a hope of life in heaven. Zen Buddhists believe that death is just a part of the circle of life. It's just the part of the natural order of things. Many religions, if you will, place their final destination on the life that's lived in this world. Hinduism, Buddhism, Jainism, Sikhism maintain the belief in what's called samsara, which is the wheel of life, which means we're born, we live, we die, we're reincarnated, and come back to do it again. The people of these faiths believe that death leads to rebirth of the person into another life, and not even human sometimes. If you're brought back into another life, you may not be in a human form. You may be in some other form altogether, maybe even a lower life form. And to be reborn, if you will, so in some of these religions, to be reborn, you may pass through multiple realms. Rudolf Otto coins the phrase numinous, Numinous, which means divine spirit. And this divine spirit is there to help people understand and how to encounter the holy. Numinous is characterized by two powerful contending forces. Mysterium Tremendum, Mysteриum Tremendum, Tremendum, that's that all-inspiring mystery. Feeling awe, feeling something beyond ourselves when we counter the divine, if you will. The other powerful force is Fascians, Fascins, the feeling of being of an overwhelming attraction to the divine. Now, you have to remember that Otto's concept discounts, if you will, the mystical experience that is found in Buddhist teachings. Almost all religions believe in some form of transcendent state of existence, life beyond this one. Now, let's talk about the dimensions of religion, and they were brought together by a man named Ninian Smart. Ninian Smart is his last name, Smart. He talks about this dimensional scheme of religion. He gives 7 different dimensions to religion. The first one is mystic, and they are the sacred narratives. The second dimension is doctrinal, philosophical, if you will. The third is ethical or legalistic. The fourth is experiential, which is the emotional. The next one is ritual, which is put into practice. And then there's social, how we interact with the people around us. And then finally, material. During this course, we're going to study religions from 3 different perspectives. We're going to talk about the religion's teachings, if beliefs are personal and not given an outward expression, it cannot be studied. So we've got to study, if you will, the teachings. Once put out in oral form or in written form, it can be passed down and it can be examined, and that's what we're going to be doing with the teachings. Then we're going to talk about historical development of these religions. Almost all religions have some kind of intricate history. And many of these histories are manifested, if you will, through social and artistic and architectural ways. Then finally, we're going to talk about the ways of life. How do the adherents of this religion live out their faith? Through rituals and rites. And then how do they put it into practice? Religions in the modern world are something that have to be looked at. Modernization, society is constantly changing. Changes correspond with the natural world, if you will. Literacy rates brought sacred writings into the hand of more people. Back in the day, Christians could not read the Bible because they didn't know Latin, or they didn't know Greek or Hebrew. But now that those sacred writings are in the hands of almost everybody that wants one. Change has also been brought about through technology that tends to deny tradition and authority. Around the world, authority in religion has been challenged seriously. Then there's urbanization, a move into the centers of growth away from the agrarian society. Many religious traditions were developed in agricultural and rural settings. That's changing dramatically. Globalization, the growing and the intermixing of different cultures. And then there's multiculturalism, coexistence of different people in one place at the same time, changes the study of everything. And then there's the role of women in religions. Interesting thought. Religions and science. With the origin of the species and Darwin, religion has been taken back a little bit. Broke down. Many religious traditions create conflict between science and religion. And then there's the academic approach from those inside and outside of the religion. And then there's also empathy, which is our feelings toward that religion from the perspective of someone else. I will take a break. We will come back and we will finish up with indigenous North American religions.